The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives, until the pastor walked down the aisle, and the police K9 attacked him. What the dog uncovered beneath the church would expose a century-old horror that was never meant to be found. If you're ready for stories that will chill you, move you, and leave you speechless, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. These are true tales you won't forget. The morning sun shone down on the quaint little chapel nestled in the woods outside Miller's Field, casting a warm golden hue on its white-painted siding and ivy-draped steeple. Birds chirped merrily in the trees as the townsfolk gathered for what was supposed to be the most joyful event of the season, the wedding of Emily Harper and James Dalton. The pews filled quickly with guests wearing their Sunday best, and a soft hum of chatter echoed beneath the tall wooden rafters. Pastor Raymond Cole, a kind-eyed man in his early 50s with a salt-and-pepper beard and a reputation for his gentle sermons, stood near the altar, his Bible clutched reverently in his hands. No one could have imagined what was about to happen next. Among the guests was Officer Leah Grant, a local K9 handler, who had been invited by James, a childhood friend. Sitting beside her was her loyal German Shepherd, Titan, a massive, disciplined dog trained for scent detection and protection. Leah hadn't planned to bring Titan inside the church, but the sudden summer heat had convinced her not to leave him in the car. He was calm and alert, lying quietly at her feet, drawing smiles from the guests nearby. But Titan's ears twitched as the music began, his sharp instinct sensing something no human eye could see. The ceremony proceeded with the usual grace. Emily, glowing in her mother's lace gown, walked down the aisle on her father's arm as the organ played. James stood waiting, visibly nervous but full of love. As the couple joined hands and turned to face Pastor Cole, Titan rose slowly, hackles beginning to rise. Leah placed a hand on his back, whispering for him to stay. But his eyes were fixed, intently, on the pastor. Pastor Cole opened his Bible and began his address. Marriage is a sacred covenant, a bond not just of love, but of faith and truth. His voice rang with sincerity, but Titan let out a low growl. Heads turned. Pastor Cole paused, clearly startled. Leah yanked on Titan's leash gently, trying to calm him, but the dog's eyes had turned wild, focused not on the congregation, but directly at the man behind the pulpit. Without warning, Titan let out a fierce bark and bolted down the aisle, leash snapping from Leah's grip. The church erupted in gasps as the German Shepherd charged forward, leaping with precision and slamming into Pastor Cole, knocking the man to the floor. Screams broke out. The bride cried out in shock as the groom rushed forward, trying to pull the dog away. Leah sprinted up the aisle, shouting Titan's name, heart-pounding in confusion and fear. Pastor Cole screamed, more in shock than injury, as Titan hovered over him, snarling but not biting. The dog's nose was twitching frantically, and he wasn't attacking, he was guarding. Sniffing. Barking again with purpose. Leah grabbed Titan's collar and wrestled him back, heart pounding, while ushers rushed to help the shaken pastor to his feet. I don't understand. Pastor Cole stammered, trembling and pale. He just lunged at me. Leah apologized profusely, tugging Titan outside and securing him in the patrol SUV. The rest of the wedding was in disarray. Emily was crying, the guests murmuring nervously. Pastor Cole tried to regain composure, but he was clearly shaken. After some delay, the couple decided to postpone the ceremony, too distressed to continue. Back outside, Leah sat beside the SUV, watching Titan pace and whine inside the vehicle. She'd never seen him act like that, so precise, so focused. He hadn't acted out of aggression. He was trained not to bite unless threatened. No, this was something else. Something had triggered him. Later that evening, Pastor Cole insisted on speaking privately with Leah. He invited her back to the church, still clearly rattled but trying to make peace. I don't blame the dog, he said gently. But I do wonder why he acted the way he did. There must be something. Leah nodded, choosing her words carefully. Titan is highly trained. He's not unpredictable. If he reacted, there's usually a reason. Scent, threat, or something hidden, Pastor Cole said softly, his eyes dropping. He hesitated, then glanced toward the old wooden floorboards beneath the pulpit. "There's something I should show you." Leah raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Pastor Cole led her to a narrow stairwell behind the altar, half concealed by a heavy velvet curtain. "This church is over 150 years old," he explained. "There's a cellar below, no longer used. The original builders dug a series of tunnels down there, mostly forgotten now. But in the past few weeks, I've been hearing strange noises late at night. I thought it was just the old wood settling." He trailed off. Leah's hand instinctively moved to her holster. They descended slowly into the cool darkness beneath the church. The air grew damp and heavy, and the narrow stone steps creaked underfoot. A musty smell filled the air. The cellar was larger than Leah expected, with rotted beams and crumbling walls. Cobwebs dangled from the ceiling. At the far end was a small, bricked-up archway, its edges blackened as if once scorched. As Titan padded beside them, now calm but alert, he stopped suddenly and stared at the bricks. Then he sat, tail stiff, and let out a deep, low growl. Pastor Cole turned to Leah, his face pale. "I didn't build that wall. It's always been there. But last night, I swear I heard scratching. Something, or someone, is behind it." Leah stared at the wall, her breath catching in her throat. Titan barked once, sharp and commanding. Something ancient and buried was about to come to light. The silence in the underground chamber pressed against Leah's chest like a weight. Pastor Cole stood frozen, his eyes locked on the bricked-over archway while Titan remained perfectly still, gaze fixed, body tense. The old church above them had always carried a quiet reverence, but down here, the air was different, thicker, heavier, and somehow watching them back. Leah slowly stepped toward the wall, her flashlight casting shaky shadows across the uneven surface. The bricks were old but not ancient, as if added much later than the surrounding stonework. She knelt beside them and ran a hand along the mortar. "This was done recently," she murmured. "Within the last few decades, maybe less. Someone didn't want whatever's behind this to be found." Pastor Cole swallowed hard. "Why would a church have a sealed chamber underground? We've kept records. I've studied them. There's no mention of this passage or anything like it." He stepped back and rubbed his hands nervously together. "It's like it was hidden, on purpose." Leah stood up and looked at him, her voice firm. "We need to open it." Pastor Cole hesitated, torn between curiosity and dread. "I'm not sure that's wise." "I'm not sure we have a choice," Leah replied. "Titan didn't attack you. He reacted to what's behind this wall. If there's something dangerous here, something festering underground, it could put everyone in danger. Especially if people like you have been hearing sounds coming from it." Still reluctant, the pastor finally nodded, and they climbed back up into the main sanctuary to gather tools. By the time they returned with a sledgehammer, chisel, and lanterns, night had fallen outside. The church above was cloaked in eerie silence. The pew sat empty in the moonlight filtering through stained glass. Titan led the way back down into the cellar, each step sounding louder in the growing tension. With a deep breath, Leah raised the sledgehammer and struck the wall. The first blow sent a puff of dust into the air, and the sound echoed off the stone like a muffled scream. Piece by piece, brick by brick, they chipped away at the barrier. It wasn't long before a damp, foul odor wafted from the opening, a mix of decay, mildew, and something else. Something old. Leah wrinkled her nose and shined her flashlight through the small gap now forming. At first, all she saw was darkness. Then, movement. A scuttling shape darted past the beam. She froze. Something's alive in there. Pastor Cole stepped back, crossing himself instinctively. What kind of animal lives sealed behind bricks? They widened the hole enough to step through, though Pastor Cole hung back as Leah entered the hidden space with Titan beside her. The flashlight swept across crumbling stone, rusted metal fixtures, and collapsed wooden shelves. Strange symbols were scrawled on the far wall in a dark, reddish pigment. Titan stopped abruptly, sniffed the air, and began pawing at the ground near the corner. Leah moved to examine it and found what looked like a half-rotted wooden trapdoor, covered in dust and soil. With effort, she pried it open. A fresh burst of foul air hit her face, and her stomach turned. She peered into the pit, and gasped. Beneath the trapdoor was a small, shallow grave. Bones. Dozens of small bones. Human, by the look of them. Children. Leah stumbled back in shock, and Pastor Cole rushed to her side. One look, and his hand flew to his mouth. Dear God! Leah dropped to her knees and steadied herself. Her voice trembled. This is why Titan reacted. He smelled death. There's no record of this? Nothing in your church's history. Pastor Cole was visibly shaking. Nothing. This church has always been considered holy ground. We've baptized children here. Held weddings and funerals. How could this be beneath us all this time? As Leah snapped photos with her phone, she noticed something even more disturbing. Among the skeletal remains were scraps of fabric, black robes, small medallions etched with unfamiliar symbols, and a rusted ceremonial dagger. This wasn't just a burial. This was a ritual, she said, her voice tight with anger. Something terrible happened here. Suddenly, Titan let out a sharp bark and turned toward the passageway behind them. His ears were up. Someone was upstairs. Leah tensed. Stay here, she said to the pastor. She grabbed her flashlight and carefully crept up the narrow stairs, Titan just ahead of her. As she reached the sanctuary, she heard the creak of the front door slowly swinging shut. A shadow moved across the aisle and disappeared. She rushed forward. Hello? Who's there? But no one answered. The church was empty. Except for the smell. Faint, but present. The same decay and earthiness as the pit below. Pastor Cole came up behind her, his face pale. No one else should have had a key. Leah's heart pounded as she scanned the room again. Someone knows about this. Someone doesn't want it uncovered. She looked toward the pulpit. Just beyond it, beneath the cross hanging on the back wall, something glinted in the moonlight. She approached and found a small, rusted emblem tucked between the floorboards, a match to the medallions in the pit. It hadn't been there earlier. Leah turned to the pastor, eyes narrowed. Someone's watching us. And they were inside the church. Titan growled low, ears locked on the darkened vestibule. Pastor Cole's voice cracked. What kind of place is this? Leah shook her head. That's not just a cellar. It's a crypt. And whatever happened down there wasn't just forgotten. It was buried. She looked once more at Titan, whose stare remained fixed on the church door. Her voice hardened. This is no longer just about an attack at a wedding. This is about the truth your church was built to hide. And someone out there will do anything to keep it buried. The days following the discovery were a blur of questions, fear, and unanswered phone calls. Leah filed a quiet report with her department, carefully omitting key details she couldn't explain without sounding like she'd lost her mind. Children's bones, ritual daggers, unmarked trapdoors under a historic church, none of it added up. She and Pastor Cole agreed to keep the findings confidential until they had more evidence. But neither of them could sleep. Not after what they saw. Not with the strange emblem left in plain sight, as if to warn them. And not with Titan, now sleeping restlessly every night, pacing the house, whining at the windows at 3 a.m. like he knew something, or someone, was watching. 3 nights later, a storm rolled in, sweeping across Millersfield with furious winds and driving rain. Thunder cracked overhead like a warning bell as Leah pulled into the church driveway, headlights barely cutting through the sheets of water. Pastor Cole had called her an hour earlier, his voice panicked. It's not over, he'd whispered. I found something. Something terrible. Please, come quickly. And bring Titan. Inside the chapel, the lights flickered as Leah stepped in, rain dripping from her coat, Titan immediately alert. The pews were empty, the air stale and thick. Pastor Cole met her in the vestibule, his face hollow with fear. He held a crumpled leather-bound book in his hands. "I found this hidden in the back of the sacristy, buried behind the old hymnals. It's a journal. One of the original pastors from over a century ago. Reverend Elias Fenn." They sat in the front pew as the storm howled outside, the journal trembling in Pastor Cole's hands. The entries were old, written in looping ink with chilling content. "They brought the children down again today," one read. "We must not question the order's purpose. The blood seals the pact. The stone beneath the altar must remain fed." Page after page revealed a hidden past, a secret society operating from beneath the church, something calling itself the Order of the Crimson Veil. They had buried the truth under scripture and sermons, passing it quietly from pastor to pastor for over 100 years. Pastor Cole wiped a shaking hand over his face. "This was never meant to be found. My predecessor, Reverend Blaine, he must have hidden it. He died in a fire. Everyone said it was an accident. But now I wonder," he looked at Leah with haunted eyes. "I think he tried to expose them. And they killed him." Before Leah could respond, Titan stiffened. He growled and turned toward the door that led to the cellar stairs. Then he barked, a single, sharp bark that echoed off the stone walls. Someone was down there. Leah was on her feet in an instant. She unholstered her sidearm and nodded to Cole. "Lock the front doors. Don't open them unless I come back." Without waiting for a reply, she and Titan made their way back into the cellar, descending the creaking staircase one careful step at a time. The air was colder than before, like the very earth had drawn breath and was holding it. Titan sniffed the ground, then veered toward the far end of the cellar, toward the once bricked-over chamber they had uncovered. Leah moved behind him, her flashlight scanning the room. She froze. The grave pit was open again. But now, it was empty. Every single bone was gone. Suddenly, from the shadows, a whisper slithered through the air. "You shouldn't have come back." Leah spun, gun raised. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, thin man in a dark, water-soaked robe, hood down, eyes shining with a madness that chilled her to her core. "The blood was spilled for purpose," he hissed. "The pact must be renewed." Titan lunged before the man could move, his body a blur of muscle and fur. The figure shrieked as the dog tackled him, snarling and snapping. Leah darted forward and grabbed the man's arms, wrestling him into submission as Titan kept him pinned. She pulled his hood fully back, and gasped. It was Deacon Mullins. He'd been with the church for 30 years. Everyone knew him. He helped lead worship, visited the sick, volunteered at every fundraiser. And now here he was, whispering ancient rites and reeking of the pit's foul stench. "You think you know this place," he spat, eyes wide and unblinking. "You know nothing. The order never died. We wait. We feed. The foundation was built on sacrifice. That's why the sermons were always so sweet. Because the truth rotted beneath." Leah cuffed him and radioed the station. "Officer Grant. I have a suspect in custody. Possible homicide and ritual activity. Send backup immediately." Deacon Mullins only laughed, a terrible, hollow sound. Backup arrived quickly, taking the mad deacon into custody. Leah handed off her notes and kept the journal for evidence. Over the next few days, a forensic team excavated the underground chamber. More remains were found, more than just children. Adults, too. Sacrificed. Buried. Forgotten. The news broke quickly. "Historic church hides horrific past," read one headline. "Mass grave discovered beneath sanctuary." The town reeled. Investigation swept across old churches in the region. But it was the image of Titan, standing over the pit, teeth bared, refusing to move, that went viral. As for Pastor Cole, he stepped down quietly. Not in shame, but in mourning. He'd spent his life preaching love and light, only to find darkness lurking just below the altar. Leah stood in the sanctuary one last time, watching the workers seal off the stairway with concrete. She rested a hand on Titan's head. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered. He gave a soft huff, leaning into her touch. They walked out together, leaving behind the echoes of forgotten screams, sealed now beneath stone. The church would never hold a wedding again. And the blood that had once soaked its floor would finally be silent.